Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's stream with Daniel from Sony. Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and thanks for letting me be here.
No worries. Thanks for joining us. So Daniel's going to be talking us through today Sony's latest announcement. So yeah, Dan, what's changed? What's new? What you got?
There's a lot of exciting new things. A lot of them, I'm happy to say, is based on feedback, customer feedback. So I'm really happy to see not only that people are engaging with our equipment, giving us feedback, asking for better things, asking us to do better. We get the chance and opportunity to post that and forward that to our customers, to our Japanese engineers, and they are listening. And this is a proof that they are listening. They're actually putting this into our cameras in the future firmware. So anything that can be done software wise is going to be put in, and it's lovely to see that. Of course, there are some things that would be hardware limitized, but then it puts in a note of what we can maybe do for a next camera that could be.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when you guys released the FX9 last year, well, it was obvious then you guys were listening to what everyone was asking for, because that was such a camera driven by user feedback on the FS7 and the FS7 Mark II. So yeah, it's awesome to see you guys taking it even further.
Thank you. Yes, it's hard work. It's good work, and it's again, it all leads up to the beginning where people who are going to use the camera actually give us that feedback. If we didn't have that, then we would be working in the blind. We wouldn't be able to know what people wanted, and therefore we wouldn't probably make as good cameras as we are. So it's very, very good work.
Yeah.
So can you see my screen already? Is that everything working fine?
Yeah. I think the stream should see it. I can see it. I think we're good to go.
Good, excellent. Well, let's jump into it. Here we go. So first of all, I just wanted to touch base and make sure that everybody understands that we're in a delicate situation. We have the problems or the issues every country is facing regarding the coronavirus. We can't do as much as we would like to do because we have engineers, software engineers, employees all over the world who cannot go to the office as they normally would do. This means that some of the plans that we had in the beginning of the year have been pushed to something else, which is very unfortunate. But we are doing what we can with the situation in order to make everything as good as we promised, and also the deadlines. We're hitting the deadlines as much as possible. It is difficult, and some of the things that I'm saying today, it's the 30th of April. So maybe some things will change in the future. I don't know, unfortunately, what's going to happen. But we are doing what we can in the situation that is given to us. So please respect that, and I hope everybody understands the situation we're in. Introducing myself just a little bit. I am a product specialist. I have a very delicate name called Content Acquisition Solution Specialist. That means that I also understand the workarounds, the workflows, the things that needs to go around the camera, not only just the camera itself. It's very fun doing this. I've been working in rental business for 8 years before I joined Sony. I've been working for Sony for about 6 years. It's very interesting times. Launching the FS7, the FS7 Mark II, the FS5, the VENICE camera, the FX9. All of these things have been given into the world, and making people really engage with our equipment, and getting that feedback has been very, very interesting. Yeah, that was a little bit about me. The version 6 is quite exciting. It's got everything that's in version 6 is something that we've been asking Japan to implement, and we're very, very happy to see that actually coming true. So I'll go much more in detail. The current plan is that this firmware will be available in November this year. Well, let's have a look what it can do. First of all, based on customer feedback, when we launched it 2 years ago, was that we really want high-speed frame rate capabilities. And we weren't able to do that. We were able to do 60 frames per second, but with some smart engineering, some changing of hardware boards, something that Sony paid for, we suddenly could boost some of the frame rate capabilities, and now we got more frame rates to choose from within our camera. So we'll be able to do some 6K full frame, 16:9, up to 72 frames per second. We'll be able to do Super 35. Anamorphic 6:5 up to 72 frames per second as well. And then, of course, we'll have the Super 35 in 16:9 also up to 110 frames per second. So it's almost twice the amount of frames per second compared to what we announced 2 years ago. So it's brilliant that we can actually support the things that people are asking for. Automated workflow is very, very important for our customers, not only those who have a very tight shift when it comes to, for example, drama productions, and making sure that everything is done as effective as possible. So the lens metadata is very important, and that gets embedded into the MXF file, and we see that we're going to support more and more lenses that are developed in the world. So Fujinon and Zeiss use the extended lens metadata. Cook Eye technology, both the 2 and 3 works, and also the gyroscopic information that we actually enabled on the on version 5 is now going to be recorded inside the MXF file. So you'll be able to see the tilt, you'll be able to see the roll in post afterwards, and that makes a lot of the After Effects works or some of the Nuke workflow. They can read that metadata and they can automatically adjust the background and the VFX work based on that information. Previously, you had to manually encode this in order to do it, and that was cumbersome. So this is definitely something that is much faster. We improved the frame lines, the mask settings. Again, this is something people are very, very interested in because not only do they do one shot for one single landing space. So normally when you did a commercial, that would be for TV or it would be for the cinema. Well, now we have social media, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, and all of these commercials, that one shot might be reused, recropped into fitting that landing place. And therefore, having different user markers and frame lines when you do that one shot is very important, because you need to make sure all of the frames are perfectly in line for all the different aspect ratios. So now we have the new presets for Instagram 1:1, for 9:16 for Facebook. So everything's getting more and more intuitive to use, but also it's again something that people really been asking for. So now here, this example is just me marking up. It's a CinemaScope scene, but it can also be used for 16:9 and it can be used for Instagram as well. So this is just an example of what you would be able to do with the Venice camera in version 6. Then we have, of course, the de-squeeze possibility. We've always had that inside the camera, but now it's also possible to quickly unsqueeze and de-squeeze, squeeze or de-squeeze, sorry, with a press of a button instead of going into the menu. It's a minor thing, but it actually, when you have to do that a couple of times or many times during the day, it's just it saves you time, it saves you frustration that you just have this dedicated button to unsqueeze your anamorphic, and you can just check the sharpness, check some of the things that are optical happening within the camera, and then go back to the de-squeeze so your customer's happy. User lookup table inside the viewfinder is something that people have been screaming for a long time. So we've been able to do it before. We were able to do it with the Sony's own S7 IX, the ITU's Rec 7.9, the 800%, and you could then see log. But of course, people are creative. They have their own lookup tables. The director is already looking at the 3D lookup table. Why can't the photographer? And that was a hardware limitation. But with the version 4 upgrade, we changed the hardware, and in there we made it possible to do it. And now with version 6, we created the software so it actually supports it. So this means that the 3D lookup table that you've made will now come actively in the lookup table. So in the viewfinders, that means the EL200. And something that's quite interesting is the new Advanced Rendering Transform file, or the ART file. So this is a new filing system and a new way of rendering our signals within the camera. So the camera itself knows already what it's set to. Beforehand, for example, with the normal 3D lookup table, you needed to know what the camera was set to when you were exporting your cube file. The good thing about an ART file is it's just looking at what you want to do, what do you want to achieve in your look, and it looks and it implements that to all the video processors inside the camera, and gives you an accurate replication of what you want to achieve. So it's a kind of an advanced lookup table, but it's applying it to the video signals and the processing powers within the camera itself. So this eliminates banding. This is the example here where we can actually eliminate banding within the lookup table and give you a more clear image of what are you actually going to achieve with using this lookup table when you hit the post. so you're sure that your HDR signal is fully capable and fully achievable. So you're exposing correct. It's a quite unique way of working for. So I'm happy to see how this will work. In these days of social distancing, I just wanted to put a little pointer to one of the systems that is not new to Venice, but it is unique to Venice, and that's the adaptable sensor technology. So the sensor block itself is interchangeable. You can actually remove it by yourself. You don't need to be in a workshop. You don't need to be an engineer to do this. You need a 3mm Allen key, and then you can actually you can remove the block yourself, and you can put it into our small extension block, which is 2.7 meters if you use the shortest cable. And if social distancing is 2 meters, well, then you could be holding actually the sensor block itself, and your assistant could be by the camera camera body, and you'll be able to have respect of your distance and making sure with a smaller crew you might be actually be able to do something and staying safe at the same time. So it's a unique way of still producing in these troublesome times. We have the outputs into cameras, so you can actually assign camera button 3 to some of the features that the camera body can do while you have it as the camera. So you can have this sensor block in the hands of the photographer, but assign button 3 could be, for example, recording start stop or something similar. Obviously, this is very popular in narrow spaces like cars. Insurance-wise, well, then if the camera is inside the car, you don't need the same insurance. If the car is driving on the public road while the camera is inside, you don't need police escorts in some countries. So it's very popular to use in car commercials nowadays. And luckily, we see people very happy with it because they don't actually they don't lose image quality by using this system. So it's still the same image quality, just in a tiny housing. Another thing about social distancing is I wanted to touch point on is our adaptive workflow with an adapter we've made. It's got a very particular name, the CVK WA100. If you use this adapter on the Venice camera, you would actually be able to make a small proxy file version of your original RAW file. That proxy file can then be shipped automatically through internet and on either one of the cloud services that we offer or your customer's direct FTP address. So while you're on location in some city, you could send everything back to your client, no matter where in the world you are, by adapting this small adapter. It will replicate the clip name that's in the Venice camera. It will of course replicate the time code and start stop when the command of the camera is given. So it's an add-on box, but it's a way to work more effectively when you're on the set, because these files is in proxy quality MPEG-4s. They would be good enough to use for editing. They might even be good enough to use for daily files, so you can have a much faster workflow in these troublesome times. Now, Venice was one thing, but also there's the FX9 version 2, which a lot of people are very interested in. So let's go into it. There's lots of feedback. Personally, I've been using the social media to gather as much feedback from users in general, and sent reports. I think my list is about 55 different points that people really wanted to implement in the FX9 in the future. Some of them are achievable with the current hardware, so that means that it can be done with a software upgrade. And others are a little bit more out of the scope of the current hardware that's available in the FX9. So, well, duly noted. Maybe a new camera could be able to do this. But I'm very happy to see that a lot of the dialogue I've had with users has been put into the version 2. First of all, we are able to use the different aspect ratios within the camera in order to get some more frame rates. So one of them is that it is a 4K recording camera because the XAVC files are 4K in oversampled. So we're oversampling 6K to produce 4K files. So the image quality, when you use the Bayer pattern, because you're using video, you're recording video files, is really high. The image quality is noticeably different compared to our previous camera. But now you can also do a full frame crop in 5K, so you're not doing a full 36 by 24 mil full frame aspect ratio. You're doing a smaller one, but you're actually still able to record and oversample from a 5K signal down to a 4K signal. And this enables you to actually boost your frame rate up to 60p, which people have been asking for. It's something that it's really elegant to use, especially these days when you want to have broadcasters, for example, going into 4K. Well, as a minimum, they might switch from a 50i or 60i over to a 50p or 60p, depending on where you are in the world, and you can do that in full frame with a 5K crop in this camera, and actually get the job done. Also, you might notice that we can go up to 180p in full HD recording if we still stay in the same sample. So we can have a full frame scan, 16:9 or 17:9, and go up to and go up to 150 or 180p, depending on where you are in the world, what kind of frame rate you want to land at in the end. It's something. It's not a new technology, because people have been seeing this in other cameras, for example, the F55 or the FS7. I'm just happy to see that there is a consistency in the recordings with the new FX9 as well. 16-bit raw output, so 16-bit is a lot of color. We've been able to achieve that with the new XDCA, so the back piece that you can buy to the FX9. You plug that back piece onto the camera, and then you can enable inside the camera housing with version 2. You can enable a raw signal output, similar to what the FS7 could do. This raw signal can be captured by an external recorder. The FS7 is 12 bits in maximum bit rate, and this one will be able to do 16 bits, so much more color, very similar to what we've been able to do with, for example, with our F5 camera. So I'm very excited to see what kind of image quality you can get out of it.
So Atomos released their specs in terms of what you're going to be able to do with this as well. Did they release any other information about using it with Neon? Because obviously at the moment, I know they released the fact you can use this with the Shogun 7 and get 12-bit because ProRes RAW. But how is it working in terms of Neon? Are they going to do that with, like, are they going to use Cinema DNG instead of ProRes RAW? Because I know obviously ProRes RAW is limited to 12-bit. Yes,
I mean, it's a really good question. Unfortunately, I don't know. I don't know exactly what Atomos is developing. There should be some kind of news from them very soon, I expect, but yeah. I don't know, unfortunately. So as of today, I don't know of an existing recorder that will be able to do this, but I'm sure when the version 2 of the FX9 will be available to the people, there will be some kind of a recorder out there that can do this. Who's going to produce this recorder? I don't know, but it's something that will be possible when the camera is coming out. That I'm pretty sure of. Yeah. But it's exciting to know that with this camera we can actually do this. It's achievable to get 16-bit RAW out of the camera, so it's all about designing a recorder that can actually capture it. Because the camera is definitely not the limitation here. One thing that I do want to note is that people were hoping for 120 frames in Super 35 in 4K mode, and we haven't been able to do that in version 2. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I had to disclaim about the coronavirus is that we do not have the possibility to be as effective as possible, and this was one of the things that was cut in version 2. When it will come, I don't know. I'm hoping sooner than later, but it is something that I just wanted to mention because people are looking forward to doing 4K 120p with this camera in RAW. So hopefully next firmware. I'm as disappointed as you guys. Use of 3D LUTs. So we've been able to do use of 3D LUTs. For example, I spoke about it in the Venice camera. Now, as with the FX9, you can import by SD cards your cube files. So these cube files can then be stored onto the camera. Up to 16 files can be stored in one camera, and you can have a bunch of them on the SD card itself and just keep loading them if you want. And this is a brilliant way of making your unique look and viewing that within the camera. So you can review it in the viewfinder, you can view it in the SDI and the HDMI output as well. You can enable which one you want on and off, but it's only available if you record 4K. So we as with the current system, when you're shooting Cine EI, and you set the camera to recording HD, you can't choose between having a lookup table on the viewfinder or the SDI signal and not record it on the internal files, which is a frustration for some people because there's a limitation to the camera compared to maybe the FS7, but it is something that's still going to be a limitation in version 2. It is under investigation what can be done. My personal feedback to Japan is how can we get this to work, because this is something that is really important. A lot of people are still producing HD today, even though 4K is coming more and more. I'm hoping to see some kind of positive answers in the near future. But right now, it's still a limitation within. You can only do this in the 4K, even though it is disappointing. Yes, so we actually changed the settings of the camera. So the base settings will be different. I find it a little bit more intuitive to anybody who's not introduced to the Sony world of cameras, because you can either choose the Cine EI mode, but you can then go from SDR production or HDR production. So the HDR will then enable the hybrid log gamma. You have the different tones of hybrid log gamma, or you can choose in custom mode, you can choose S-log. If people want to work that way. I prefer telling people to work in Cine EI, because in Cine EI you have the maximum color space available. That means that you will have more colors to color grader with in post if you choose Cine EI. But it is possible to do anything in custom mode. That's why it's custom. Then there is the SDR files, and in the SDR you can actually do this. Choose between the Rec 709, the S Cinetone, or Hyper Gamma, which is also a really good gamma curve. So these are now a little bit more intuitive if you've never seen the camera before. If you haven't read the manual, then it's something that is much more elegant to use. And quite elegantly, I want to go to some of the new things that I find very exciting when you go into SDR mode or HDR mode. So the ISO is going to change. It's going to get a boost in what it can do, because the image sensor of the FX9 is amazing. It is doing amazing stuff. The signal to noise ratio is something I've never seen in a video camera before. I've seen something really good in an Alpha 7S, for example. People have been doing amazing stuff with a high ISO, but I've never seen it in a video camera. And I'm happy to see that we can go up to 102,000, so 100,000 ISO with an FX9, and this is the base ISO set in the in either HDR mode or SDR mode. So I'm interested to see what people will do with this in the future, because it's very exciting news. So this is, as I said, it's something you can choose in both S Cinetone or Rec 709, but you can also switch and play around with your hybrid log gamma or S log, for example. So it's interesting stuff. Just one thing I wanted to note: when you do the Cine EI, you lock your base ISOs, and there is no change. So the Cine EI, when you switch to that, it will be S-log, and S-log is going to be the native ISO. You have the low mode, which is 800. You have the high mode, which is 4000. So that's not going to be any change. All these creative stuff is something you have to do by going into SDR or HDR mode. The autofocus. So autofocus is something that's coming inside a video camera for once. So we've been able to do it in a stills camera, which is it's been very popular. People have been loving our Alpha 7 cameras because they can do eye autofocus. And now when you have a full frame camera and you want to have a really really low aperture, then you can actually you noticeably see where the sharpness is. If it's not sharp on the eyes, well, then it will not be a shot that you would want to use in post. So by having eye autofocus is something that's very interesting in this camera. I'm also looking forward to seeing this in action as well. I cannot speak about that without also mentioning a very cool thing, which is the touch autofocus. So the FX9 is actually with a touchscreen viewfinder. So the LCD is a touchscreen. We didn't enable it in version 1. I didn't know it was a touchscreen until a few months after the release of the FX9. But finding out that it was capable of using the touchscreen, I was so happy to see that it's actually coming in version 2. And you can use the touchscreen to push your focus, and where does your focus points want to be. If you have multiple faces, you can touch on the face you want. It's so intuitive to use, and people who have an FX9 and tried an FX9 has been asking for this actually for a couple of months, and I'm so happy to see that this is coming on the FX9 in version 2. Another thing, I had multiple dialogues with people at IBC last year who was looking at the FX9, and we had so much input, and one of them, so many people said, well, how about we can change the transition speed on a assignable button, because it was a cumbersome going into the menu and then changing this. And in the beginning, we didn't quite understand why would you want to do this, but by having dialogue of users, people who see themselves using an FX9 in the field and wanted to change how the focus is either moving in speed or how it's going to be changing from subject to subject. Well, we had a constructed dialogue at IBC with our customers and with our engineers, and developed this idea of how could we do this. And I'm so happy to see that this is in version 2, and it seems to be very intuitive. You can assign one of the buttons. So let's say we have here, for example, we have assigned button 2 for the transition speed. If you press assign button 2, your viewfinder will have a transition speed icon, and then you can use the dial within to actually change the speed while you have the camera on your shoulder. So these are some buttons that are quite easily accessible when the FX9 is on your shoulder. So you don't need to take it off your shoulder and go into the menu to change this. You can actually set an assign button for it. Some of the more cool things about having a touchscreen is that you can, without going into the menu, you can go into the status bar. So the status bar is something we've had for a long time and gives you a clear overview. What can you actually do with the FX9 when you have when you have the camera on the shoulder? So people use it today with seeing the overview of the settings. What is the ISO settings at? How is the 4 channels of audio doing? Well, now because of the touchscreen, you will, when you go through the status button, anything that is orange is something that would be changeable with touch. So you can go into the status button and flick through the 13 pages, and then anything that is orange you can change on the fly, which is very handy to do. It's something that I see people been very happy with the intuitiveness from the Venice camera. So it's something that is inspired by into the intuitiveness of the Venice camera and put into the FX9. Since we don't have this double-sided control panel that we have on the Venice camera, well, with the FX9, it's suddenly something you can abuse with the touchscreen. So I'm happy to see that this is something that I didn't know we could do this. So it's amazing. Here's just some of the points. I mean, so that's 13 pages to go through. I'm looking forward to see how people will adapt to this. Some of the other updates, which is quite interesting. First of all, the 6G SDI is something people have been screaming for. If you have a 4K screen or, for example, a 4K capture card, and you set the camera to full frame, 30p, 24p, 25p, well, you couldn't get an SDI signal out of the FX. Can with version 2 because it enables 6G output. This means you get a very clean signal, and you can do that in the future. Wireless audio is been many of our people that are using this camera for example, news and broadcast have been using our slotting solution, where you could use this for an ENG camera, and the FX9 elegant. Well, it has this design of the back piece where you can suddenly slot in the audio, so it becomes a part of the camera body instead of using the MI shoe on top. So any audio you put into this slot, if it's a 2-channel audio, this will go into channel 3 and channel 4 of the camera automatically. This means that you have the XLR, you have the MI shoe that you can assign to channel 1 and channel 2, and you can still control these as well. And all of them, of course, can be controlled manually. The XLR, the K3M that came out, has been using the analog signal. So the previous versions that of MI-SHU, and now with the version 2 will support the digital audio as well. This gives you a much better signal to noise ratio, and maybe you'll have a noticeable difference in the audio where you have less noise, between 6 and 9 dB gain. So it's quite an improvement switching to digital with this adapter. And this is another way for the FX9 to suddenly have 4 pieces of XLR input. So it's nice to see that it's fully digital now. This is an overview of what's actually coming, and again, it's something that I've been mentioning, what the camera can do in basics. Again, we are doing this live, so people can comment, people can ask questions, and I'm here to answer as many of the questions that I know. There are some questions, of course, that would be asked that I don't know, and respectively, I can't answer them. And fair enough. I would engage you to ask the questions because I'm here to answer if I can.
So yeah, we've had a couple go through, but yeah, we'll go through them at the end, mate. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
I just wanted to say, well, there's all these points, and I want to answer as many questions as possible.
Cool.
One thing that I thought that people should know about is our support deals. So people buy these cameras, they are professional cameras, they're expensive cameras. You want them to last and work as much as possible. Accidents happens, and you need to be in secure. You know, need to be secured that if something breaks, we'll be able to fix it. And we have PrimeSupport when you buy a camera, but we also have the Elite if you need some extra level of service. So if you need maybe a loan unit while your camera is broken, let's say you hired for a 6-week shoot and something happens in the first week, well, then you need to sub-rent one. Well, what's that sub-rent going to cost you for 5 weeks? Well, you could alternatively have an Elite support and actually have a free loan unit from Sony for the whole repair period if you should need that. Another thing is that normally we offer 2 years when you buy a camera, but if you go in and register after a few days you've purchased that camera, you'll get an extra year for free. So that's €200 you'll save. So instead of having 2 year support, we'll have 3 year support, which is it's always nice. Love that for my car. Oh, I thought I hidden these. I wanted to talk about the virtual production. So this is not a new thing. It's nothing to do with version 2. I just wanted to mention it because it's quite interesting that the FX9 has built-in capabilities so it can actually stream directly to the cloud. We've had a few customers who are using this today where they enable the streaming inside the camera. They have a producer sitting somewhere else looking into the cloud and seeing all of these different camera feeds, up to 6 different camera feeds. So you can actually have 6 different FX9s all streaming to one cloud, and one producer is then switching between all the feeds and then dedicating the output. Where should that be? Should it be YouTube? Should it be Facebook? Or should it be one of the other platforms where you can stream directly to? So you don't need a dedicated hardware to do this. You just need an FX9, an internet connection, and you need to get into your account. And normally we would ask you to pay for this service, but as another thing that we have with the whole corona situation is that if you register your product or register your account, you go in, register account, play around with it, you'll have a small Sony logo when you try to stream. But when you're ready to stream and you want to remove that logo, normally you would pay for that. I believe it's about €100 for maybe a couple of hours. But in these corona days, we'll offer you 24 hours of full streaming without paying anything. So all you need to do is register onto the homepage, make an account, play around. When you're ready, you could then email Sony and says, I have this account and I would like to get the 24 hours of streaming without any watermarks on them, and we'll give you that for free because of these troublesome times. So use that as well. Another thing is something that we have been working on for some time, is that these cameras have the capability of sending files directly built into the cameras and sending them to our platforms. So you could have a customer's FTP server, but maybe you don't have an FTP server, maybe you don't have one yourself. You could then go into Sony's media cloud system. We call it C. So what you can do is you can send your files directly to C and then have your own workspace. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create automation within this cloud service. We look at metadata, so we look at the GPS signals, we look at the timestamps, the time codes, the dates of recordings, and we can now merge these metadata files with production planning documents. So normally when you go on a production, you have this call sheet where it says, okay, this is the photographer, this is the producer, this is the assistant, this is the location, and this is the date where we're going to record. Well, C can go in and look at those documents and say, well, that's the planning document, but these are the files. It's the same location, it's the same date. How about we just make one big pile of metadata with all the video files, because they are mixed together. It's the same production, it's the same date. Let's just make everything into one intelligent metadata bundle and give this to the editor. So any editor will then be able to search the metadata and find the files that have been recorded on the fly. And this is something that you can record immediately. You can send the files automatically through the internet. So just get an internet connection from the FX9, record proxies on the SD card, send those directly to the cloud, and somebody could be in another city and record. Start editing the files as soon as you've stopped recording them. So it's an easy way to reduce your workflow, reduce the timings, and make things much more elegant. should there be any files from a small action camera, or maybe there's something from stills, you can also send these up to the cloud. So you'll have this upload settings, so you can just send any kind of extra files, and they could be merged within the same project as well. And you can, if you have multiple clients, you can assign which clients should have access to these contents. So it's, again, this is something that we offer within the camera, because you don't need any extra hardware. You need an FX9 and you need an internet connection. We offer free of charge account creation. You get 5 gigabytes free of charge. That's quite a lot of proxy material, but if you're going to have hours and hours of proxy material, then you can upgrade for, I think it's maybe $20 or something like that, and then you'll suddenly have many gigabytes in order to do this. So it's not expensive, and it is available. It's not something we pay for. You pay for it in a license. It's built into the FX9. It's not built into the FS7. You need the same adapter that I showed you with the Venice camera. It's the elegantly named WA wireless adapter 100. So that's something I want to say. It's nothing to do with version 2, but it is regarding the FX9, and I thought this is that it's interesting to see that this is something we can do in the future with our products and people. The projects we are running at the moment. We have a Norwegian broadcaster who's testing this right now. They have this reality show where they are flying or sailing or driving from city to city and doing productions, but everything gets sent back to the capital, to the headquarters, so they can edit and they can send feedback to the team at the same day it's been recorded. That's something they haven't really been able to before, because they lost so much metadata when doing this. Anyway, I'm finished talking about that. I'm ready for some questions.
Awesome. There's a few that have kind of piled up. I was just having a really nice conversation with Cal in the YouTube chat, who were talking about. He said, "Is there a way Sony can make my FS7 8K?" And obviously, he's just joking about. And it's kind of it's kind of gone into, me wanting a 10 to 400 mil f 0.9. 0.5 lens that you with full frame coverage, and just
oh, lovely.
It's quite a funny little chat.
I mean, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a hardware developer, so I'd love to say yes, we can do everything, but there is something that there are some limitations, and I don't believe there's enough pixels in the FS7 to get 8K, but it would be great if we could do it.
No,
maybe we could do some we can do some cheating, and then we can add more pixels in post.
All right, so let's have a little look. So yeah, Cal actually asked some serious questions as well. So he does actually own an FS7 Mark 1. Is it considered end of life, or are Sony still working on updates for the FS7 system as well?
If I remember correctly, I believe the FS7 Mark 1 is end of life in terms of production. We're not going to produce it anymore. We are still going to support it in terms of spare parts and everything, but in terms of firmware development, there's not going to be a lot of firmware unless we see new media, for example, coming along. Let's say we make a 2 terabyte XQD card, then we'll make a firmware update to support the FS7 with that new card. Or let's say we find a bug, and we'll use resources to make sure that this bug is fixed. But in terms of developing the camera itself, it is turning, I believe it's going to be 6 years, this camera this year, or is it 7 years? It's something thereabouts. And it's going to be, I believe the FS7 Mark 1 is end of life. The FS7 Mark 2 though is not end of life. It's still been worked on in terms of software.
Awesome. So Crossworks, he's been very, very vocal in a few of our live streams. Thank you for joining us again, dude. Basically, he's asking about whether or not the Catalyst Browse stabilization feature is going to be added into Premiere and other NLEs. And I know this is something that you guys, did mention back when it released. Is it something that you guys are still exploring? Like, are you still talking to Blackmagic and Adobe about this?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we have actually in Japan, we have a dedicated team. We call them the Alliance team. And what they do is they go to various events, exhibitions. So when, for example, at IBC, I stand by the FX9 and say, "Oh, this is a great camera, please buy it." We have dedicated Japanese engineers who will go around to the very Adobe and Apple and Blackmagic, and actually go and make sure that they have all the necessary information and keep in touch. So we produce SDK information, and this SDK has already been shared I think it was in November, we shared the SDK to all these companies, so they are able to implement this as soon as they seem fit. So it's not something that we do. We do not write the software updates for Premiere.
Yeah.
Adobe does. So I have to give the ball over to Adobe and
Oh no,
ask.
totally.
We need to find out when they are ready, because they have all the information to do this, because we gave them that information.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. That means people can in the chat can just go and hound them instead.
Please do. Please do. Yes. Yes.
So another one. Let's have a look. So yeah, Cal asked again about the art files. Is this something that
Yes.
grading software will have to support, or is there a way of converting existing cube files?
No. So yes, you can. Yes, but no. You can create. So if you have a cube file today, you can put that in our software. So Sony has a software called Raw Viewer, and Raw Viewer will then be able, in the future, not the current version, the new version of Raw Viewer that will come when we get closer to version 6, you will then be able to put this cube file that you already made. I mean, let's say it's your favorite cube file, you've had it for 10 years, and you want to reuse that in the new art file. So Raw Viewer will then convert it into art file. You put that art file in an SD card, and you put that SD card into the Venice camera, and then you'll have you have all the information, and you'll suddenly see the full detail of your cube file inside the Venice camera. There won't be any limitations in the video processing anymore, because we'll be able to impact the processing units all the way through. So it's going to give you a much more control of what you're going to be able to do in post with that cube file that you generated immediately. So let's say you made a cube file in Resolve, and you made that for PQ, and then you could put that cube file into Raw Viewer. We will convert that into an art file, and then you will be able to see it in the Venice camera.
Awesome.
So it's a yes. You can reuse those cubes and convert them, but you need to do it in Raw Viewer. I don't know if you're going to share that SDK. I'm not the software developer on that, so I don't know if we're going to give that as an SDK to all the NLEs, so they can create their own art files. But you can take any cube file and put into the Raw Viewer, and you'll be able to do that.
Awesome. So yeah, someone brought up about what options would you suggest as a B camera to the FX9?
Well, a B camera to the FX9. Well, it's a little bit what you are trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I've seen multiple people using any kind of camera really. First of all, if you want to match them best as possible, you need a camera that can shoot S-Log as well. So having a camera and setting both of them to S-Log, if you want to have HDR, that is, or make sure you're going to be able to have the same settings. So let's say you want to have HDR, then having a camera that can also do S-Log, and then you record S-Log on both cameras, and then you match them in post by using dedicated lookup tables for each camera, because the sensors will be different. So in details, some of the artifacts or some of the looks of the cameras will be different when you go from camera to camera and you're trying to match them. But I've seen some really impressive footage. I think it was a gentleman in Hawaii that did an interview with a very old gentleman where he was testing the autofocus, but he was also doing a serious interview. So he had two cameras. He had the Alpha 7 Mark III, and he set that to autofocus. He did a wide shot, and then he matched it with an FX9 that was doing a close shot, and it was 105 or something, and f-stop 1.8 or less than 2, and the shallow, it was really a shallow depth of field. It looked amazing, and even though this old gentleman, he was very engaged in his dialogue, the camera really it tried to do as best as it could, and it looked great. It looked really good.
I think what he was trying to get at was, obviously at the moment, you've brought out this presentation alone is focusing very much on the mid and the high end. So I think for a lot of people who own the FX9 now, they're the FS5 Mark II and the FS7 and the Alphas, they've all been in the wild for a while now. And I think what people are kind of waiting for is that the camera just below the FX9, whether that's an Alpha series or an F series camera, that sits underneath it, that people can use as a B camera. I think that's I mean, obviously, it's on everyone's mind, and it's definitely going to be on Sony's mind. I think at the moment, yeah, everything's, the A7 III is still a great camera. It's limited in a lot of ways, but it depends on,
Yes,
yeah, like you say, it depends on on the production. And I'd argue, I mean, I
definitely.
think you can, if you've got a good enough colorist, or if you know how to color yourself well, you can easily match, other cameras with the FX9. You can. I wouldn't be too stressed about staying within Sony if there's other compromises with other cameras that make more sense to you. So until
Mm,
Sony do release, these two
true.
mythical cameras, I think maybe like renting in some B cameras if you own an FX9 already, testing, seeing how you can match things, I think will be massively invaluable.
Well, definitely. The reason I mentioned the Alpha 7 is it's got brilliant autofocus, just like the
Yeah,
FX9. So if you're one person and you want to do have control two cameras at once, it's going to be difficult to pull focus on both of them. So
yeah,
having two cameras that can do autofocus, two cameras that are full frame, and two cameras that can do S-Log, then you're in a pretty good ballpark on what you can suddenly do by yourself.
yeah.
Obviously, if you're two photographers and you want to do something more on the fly, then an FS5 Mark II set to S-Log. Makes incredible pictures. It's a really good camera still. It's just, it's not full frame. It's not using any intelligent autofocus. So, and it's not using XQD files. So XQD cards. Sorry. So it's a little bit more different than any other camera available. I mean, the best second camera would be two FX9s, but it's a little bit of a cheeky answer.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of people talking about the 4K 120p missing as well. So is this something you guys have got
Yes.
planned for a later firmware as well?
So yeah, we're definitely gonna do 4K, 120p. Are we talking about, I mean, what I did in the presentation or to mention in the presentation is 4K 120p in a raw signal. If
Yeah.
that was the question, that is something we will do. It is not today planned in version 2. And that is because we simply don't have access to our offices. We cannot put the software engineers next to the hardware where they can actually start developing this. They're working from home, and there are limited resources you can do from home. And therefore there are some delays and there are some cuts. And one of the cuts is 4K 120p in RAW, unfortunately.
Cool. Fair enough, man.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm as disappointed as you guys. Yeah.
so another question is, can you put wireless on channel 1 and 2? I'm not sure what wireless he's referring to there, whether it's the DWX stuff or.
Could I have the question again? Sorry.
Can you put wireless? I presume wireless audio on channel 1
Mhm.
and 2.
Yes and no. So if we're talking about the slot-in version, so the DWX slot-in version, no, it will be in channel 3 and channel 4. I think it's to do with the hardware limitation, and you have the switchboard in front of the FX9 where you can choose which input is going to be in input 1 and input 2, and there is no slot-in um, choice in channel 1 and channel 2. So any audio put into the XDCA will go into channel 3 and channel 4. But you could put a wireless signal into the XLRs, which will go into channel 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
You could have wireless signal into the MISU, which will go into channel 1 and channel 2.
Yeah.
But using the back piece, it will be channel 3 and channel 4.
Cool. Has there been any improvement to the gyro stabilizer in the FX9?
Improvements?
I don't think that has.
No, I didn't. Well, my experience with the gyroscope is very limited. I've only done some tests where I've been chasing my dog, and it's been quite good. But I didn't know that there was some needing of improvements. On social media, some of the user groups, I've had some dialogue with people who, for example, wanted some improvements in Catalyst Browse, where you could, instead of marking one clip, uh, making the stabilization and exporting one clip. Let's say you had 30 clips, then you would have to do this one by one for 30 clips in a row. They would love to have the option to stabilize all the clips and then press export once, and then it would kind of make a job list
Yeah.
where it would do it much more elegantly. And we've sent that feedback to Japan, to the software engineers. There's a really cool guy, Kay, who works in Japan, and he's a developer on the Catalyst software, and he loved the idea, and he's actually he thought it was a good idea, and he wants to try and implement it. So this feedback is so valuable because we don't have that. We're not in the situation as you guys are. You're working with these workflows and these cameras every day, and we don't do that. So your feedback is so valuable, so we can make it a better experience. So, but if there is any need of improving our gyroscopic inside the camera, I mean, it's just metadata, so we're not stabilizing anything. All the stabilization is happening in post. If there's anything not good enough there, I'd love to know about it. Because if we can do it better, I'm sure that we would love to try.
Now, from the clips that I've used, it's been good. Cool. I don't know what you guys could improve on it. It's software stabilization. It's literally doing what it says on the tin. It's just saving all the like you say, it's saving all the processing in the background. You know, I've done it a lot where I've had 40-50 minute Premiere projects open, warp stabilizing 30 clips or whatever, and you have to go through and click every single one, wait for it to process, and even on beastie computers that takes a while. So it's a feature that is actually really awesome, and it's going to save a lot of clips and a lot of time.
Yes.
Good to see the updates. I still like to shoot S-Log3 one stop over for cleaner shadows. This is Brendan on the YouTube chat. One stop over for cleaner shadows, but this affects the face detection autofocus function and makes it unreliable. Any chance of a firmware fix for this? I actually saw a couple of people talking about this. Is this something you've heard of or not?
I have not personally heard of this. I know that I haven't been pushing the FX9 in the highlights. I've been pushing it in the shadows. I was concerned that the autofocus would be bad if we turned the light down. And I've been very impressed to see the autofocus working really good. I haven't been pushing the highlights and making it lighter to do so. So I didn't know this. It could be very interesting to see some clips and try and see if we can investigate to make it better, because I haven't heard about it. And we have engineers both in Europe, in America, and of course lots in Japan. So if we know about it, we can report about it. And we can try to improve. So that would be a really good thing to do. So if you could be the contact person for this, then you already have my contact details. And we can have this discussion.
Absolutely. If anyone in the chat, if you've got any examples of this, ping them over to my email. It's just jake@cvp.com, and I'll forward them on to Daniel, and then we can get it fed back to Sony. If there is an issue, then hopefully we can try and get it fixed. Linear focus hack for focus by wire lenses. Will there be a Super 16 crop mode? That is probably the most asked question I've had about the FX9. Again, it's probably going to be the same answer, which is
I don't know. I don't know. It's again, my list of about 55 items did include a Super 16 crop mode. Of course, there will be some limitations of what you can do with the in terms of recording and in terms of maybe some of the autofocus functions, because you won't have the same amount of autofocus points. But it would be ideal if it was possible to do so, because we see a lot of people doing Super 16 in the FS7 in order to get broadcast lenses. So the feedback to Japan that we gave before the end of the year did include getting Super 16, because it was very popular in the other cameras, and people have accessories that would work on the FX9 if it did Super 16. So I understand why you want to do this, and even though I'm not a software engineer, I would bet that it's quite possible to do so. Yes, but it's not coming in version 2. So. But then again, the FS7, I remember when that was launched, and we have had lots of firmware updates for the FS7 over the time of its history. So it's great to see that this is going to be possible as well. I'm definitely hoping we're going to get just as much support on the FX9 software development as we've seen on the FS7. So keep coming with the feedback. Super 16 has already been sent to Japan as a wish list. Yes.
All right, so this is actually quite an interesting question. Is it possible to get access to the gyro data to send to something like Unreal Engine for a real-time mixed reality production?
Well, there is no extraction of gyroscope information in the MXF, so it's all embedded in the MXF as a metadata. I don't know if there's a possibility of reverse engineering that somehow. It could be interesting to see. Again, this is not my area of expertise, and it's not my area of responsibility. But if there is a dedicated use case for it, I'd love to involve the software engineers and see if there's a way to export gyroscopic metadata in order to use our cameras even more intelligently than what we can do today.
Yeah.
But no, to my knowledge, there is no way of exporting gyroscopic information in Catalyst Browse.
There must be a solution out there that can do it. So if who was it? Sorry, that's asked the question. It was Ahmed Asadi. Yeah. If you want any more information, just drop me an email, Ahmed, and we'll try and work out a solution for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, because there's different standards and formats and files that needs to be supported. So it needs to be right in the right order in order to use them properly. If you want to import them in some other software, so it could be interesting. I'd love to see FX9 being used for game development. That would be cool.
Yeah, be awesome.
Yeah.
I think during Neil's last talk that he did for us, I think you saw the question. It was from Crossworks again. It was about the green and blue fringing on the edges of the frame, like in the image. So did you hear anything back about from like HQ about that or not?
It is something that we've it's still under the investigation. It's on everybody's radar. It's something that we're trying to investigate. So compared to what we talked about last, is that we've got so many examples from users, and we could then feed that back to Japan, and they understand it now, and they're working on how to improve this. Yes, because it's a quite unique behavior, and it's something that of course we want to fix. So we're trying to see how we can fix that. So thanks for that feedback.
That's amazing news. Crossworks, I hope that is the answer that you wanted. If you're part of the Facebook group, shout from the rooftops, let everyone know that Sony know that it's an issue now, and it's gonna, like you say, it's hopefully gonna get fixed soon.
Yeah.
And then the question we had earlier about the XDCA audio channels. So that I think that would be, so that's I agree with Oscar, having the XDCA slot in mics go to channel 1 and 2 would be handy to have that choice to change which channels it went to. So I think that may be something to add onto the ever-growing list of stuff that people have asked for.
Well, I do believe I've already had this discussion, not with but internally though, and I do believe, if I remember correctly, I'll double check, but I do believe that my feedback was the same, because so many people use channel 1 and channel 2, especially for broadcast.
Yeah.
So let's say you are a journalist and you have a wireless hand mic and you're doing interviews backwards and forwards, and suddenly a bus come by, and everybody who's a photographer in broadcast would, for the most part, they would be having access to channel 1 or channel 2 very, very quickly, very elegantly, and turn that signal up or down depending on the situation. So I understand the need for it, and I've already requested it, but I do believe that it's a hardware limitation inside the camera. So I do believe that the hardware wiring, in order to get the DWX signal into the camera itself and being recorded inside the camera, making it one solution, is a hardware limitation, that it has to go to channel 3 and channel 4. But I understand why it would be really nice to have in channel 1 and channel 2. I just don't think it's going to be possible with how the camera is designed internally. But I'd be very happy to double check it and make sure it's something that, if it's possible, that it could be put on the list of things to do. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, but it's a good question. I really appreciate it.
I'm just trying to probe some more questions. Cow's being silly and is asking what favorite flavor of donut is.
I'm a simple man. Sugar coating is
sugar
good.
coating just simple. I'm a sucker for anything salted caramel, so I'm gonna go with that.
No. I mean,
too complex.
I was also with coffee. I drink it black.
I'm not. I'm a black coffee guy too. Did we? I don't know if we spoke about it earlier. About the Atmos size stuff, but I don't know if people realize. So when the XECA, when this firmware comes out, the Shogun 7 is going to support 4K, 60, 50, and it's 182K, which is awesome. I mean, that's one new piece of news of today, because obviously before this, we only knew that Atmos, the Neons, were going to be supporting the 16-bit, but it's great to see that you can do ProRes RAW now. So I'm really interested to see what that 12-bit image is like, how close it can get to Venice, because that's obviously one thing that it's I mean, from all the testing that I've done, the FX9 sensor is fantastic in terms of like bringing back blown out highlights and shadows. It's one of the best sensors like at its price point. So but then you look at the Venice and you can, because obviously the bitrate differences in the codecs, you can see it has got that bit more of information to pull back. So I'm interested to see how close you can get it to the Venice with this update, and especially with 16-bit once that comes out as well.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I also there's going to be a difference in raw quality from the FX9 compared to the Venice camera, because the Venice camera is going to be undebayered raw recording, so you're going to have more possibilities in post with the Venice camera's XOCN than you would ever be able to do with the FX9.
Yeah, I mean, XOCN is fantastic anyway, isn't it? So
it's doing really well. I'm not a colorist. I can't see the difference between XOCN, LT, and standard. Sorry, but I can't. But it looks amazing, and the bit rate that you can get out of XOCN, LT, and get the quality without any compromises is amazing to me. So it looks really, really good. And the sensor on the Venice camera is so much different. When you really go into some of the high details, you would be able to see a difference in 100%. As well.
Yeah, I mean, so the Venice sensor is again, it's mind-blowing, the performance of it, and it's one of, I mean, that's one of the, I think one of the biggest difference I've noticed is how much faster that readout speed is. Like, it's just, it's one of the cleanest in terms of rolling shutter, like, it's fantastic. So and like you say, XOCN is insane, so it's, there is going to be a big difference, obviously. But in terms of like how close people can get it, because I can see these higher end productions, if you can get a more malleable image out of the FX9, then I could see it being used as a B or a C camera on these higher end productions with Venice. So it'd be interesting to see how it gets used.
I would love to see some raw material done in 16-bit in 100,000 ISO and using that on a production. That would it would blow my mind to see what people can do with this. I don't know. First of all, I don't know what Atom is doing because I'm not within this round table of development. So I have no idea what's to come. I could imagine that there might be some kind of stepping stones between of what you can do when you want to go to 16-bit and in what you then are limited to do in terms of frame rate, because 16-bit and frame rates require so much of your CPU power, processing chipset power. So there's you might be able to, some of the current products, be able to go up to 16-bit, but maybe not the highest speed in orbit. So let's say you can, I'm just imagining, I don't know. Let's say you can do full frame and you can do 16-bit up to 30p. But if you want to do beyond 30p, you'd have to go down in bitrate on some of the current recorders. Maybe that's going to be one of the things you'd have to limit or look at some of the newer hardware that might be coming this year. So it's this is nothing I know for sure. It is me and my experience within hardware, how there are some limitations when you want to do more with less, and I can imagine that would be maybe some of the compromises people would have to do with raw recording out of the FX9. But until we see some some newer products and some even better hardware, then we might be able to see some amazing things with this. Yes, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So with this 20, another question, actually, I'm not sure about the answer to this. With the 28-135, can you change the focus throw on the kit lens? I've got a broken one in front of me. Let me have a look at it.
Can you change the focus ring direction?
No, the focus throw I think because when you're in autofocus mode, it's focused by wire, isn't it? Well, it's essentially focused by wire. It's you can spin it and it will just go, but then you can pump it back and then it's actually got focus. It actually has focus marks on it. So I doubt that would be the case.
So I'm not too sure what the question is, just to make sure I understand.
The 28-135, can you change the focus throw on it when you're manual focusing? So how far the focus rotation is?
I have to apologize again. I'm not English is not my first language. so focus throw.
So basically, how far you have to the close focus is and the infinity mark is, and how long how many degrees you've got to turn the focus barrel to travel from infinity to close focus.
Ah, yes, I got it. Okay. Well, first of all, as you said, if you pull the focus back and you have 100% manual focus, it is fixed. It's a fixed focus. You'll have a locking mechanism. It will stop physically you from turning any further or any closer, depending on which way you're going. The other one is, as you say, you can release it and it will be manual focus / autofocus. So you can switch inside the camera menu of what you want to do and what the camera should do. It is focused by wire, and it is a lens that has been made by our lens division. So we do, of course, talk to each other, but it is some of the things that is out of my perspective of what can actually be done by focus by wire, and how can make. So we're talking about how the sensitivity could be changed. So you either have a long throw,
exactly,
or a short throw, in order to.
So at the moment, it's roughly...
to my knowledge, it's fixed because it's focused by wire. But
so in theory, if it's focused by wire, when you've got it in that mode, in theory you could have it as anything, because obviously focused by wire is just translating the how much you're turning it digitally to then the focus element to the elements. Whereas obviously when you're doing it manually and you're in theory connected to the focus, the glass actually moving and focusing, then obviously it's going to be limited. So if it has that servo in it, which it does for autofocus, in theory you could change the amount of degrees you need to turn, but it obviously depends on like how those motors are designed to then translate that, if they're sensitive enough to then limit it. Because I know like a lot of other focus by wire lenses.
I'm just thinking, because depending on how the sensitivity is, in terms of how many sensors are in when you're turning it. There are, of course, some limitations on this, but I could imagine if I approach the lens division team, they might be able to do a firmware upgrade for the lens itself. And be able to do this. Of course, it needs to be coalitioned with the camera developers as well, because then you would have to control the sensitivity inside the camera, and you would have to assign: do you need a slow turn or a fast turn, or do you want the mid range as you have today? It needs to be done intelligently, not only from the camera division, which I represent, but also the lens division.
Totally.
But it could be interesting to talk to them, see if it's something that can be done, if it's worth a while.
Yeah, I think with the 16-35 coming out, especially, I think that'll be something people will want on that.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, I think that's definitely worth something them exploring.
I understand what they're trying to do. Yeah.
We've got a very optimistic guy who wants to know if Toby, will the FS7 Mark II ever get ProRes RAW? Question.
The Alpha 7.
No, the FS7 Mark II.
No, the FS7 Mark II.
Yeah.
Will they ever get ProRes RAW?
That could be a cool update. That could be a cool update.
Yeah, it could. I don't know, to be honest. If it's something that is physically possible at all, I don't know if it's possible within the hardware that is in the XDCA. And also, we've already paid a fixed license for every device that we've made. So there is an Apple license within the device itself. So I couldn't imagine it would be possible without paying an extra license to Apple to do this. So it's a firmware update. It's a look at the hardware capabilities, and it's to looking into how willing Apple is willing to do this with the current license we have, or we need to pay extra money to do this. I understand the point, but I haven't asked it. It's a good question. No, it's duly noted, but it's not something I've requested, to be honest. Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. I think, mate, that's about everything. We've answered a lot of questions. I think you've been going for probably about an hour and 10 minutes. It's good.
Yeah, very good. No,
Great.
I mean, normally I would love to go face to face, physically go to these to your shop and doing a presentation. But I mean, with the travel restrictions, I'm in my man cave and able to do this from home. But it's I'm happy to see that we actually got viewers listening to me and asking questions. I think it's brilliant in these times that we can actually that we can do this.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy that everybody's spent their time listening to me and asking me questions. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. Have you ever been over to like our main our main showroom to Newman Street? Oh, you have. Awesome.
Yes, the new one, the newer location, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Can't wait for it to all open back up.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I really appreciate it. There's a lot of really good information there. Really appreciate it, dude. And yeah, any other questions on the YouTube or on Discord, put them in Discord or put them on the YouTube after the fact, and either myself or Daniel will be able to get an answer there for you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, mate. Have a good one. Speak to you guys soon.